Hey everyone, welcome to Mason Woodshop. In this video, we are going to be reviewing the Creality Falcon2 Pro laser. This is an enclosed laser system, and the version that I have in front of me right now is the 22 watt laser, which includes the air assist. They also have a 40 watt version, which includes a bonus 1.6 watt laser, which can get you that fine detail engraving. And they also have a variety of bundles available with different accessories across both of those different powered lasers. So in this video, we are going to be putting this through its paces. I've been using it over the last couple of weeks, and I want to show you what I like, some of the things that I don't like about it, as well as some of the nuances. And while my experience with lasers is pretty limited, I have had the Xtool S1 20 watt in the shop for the last few weeks. And while this isn't meant to be a comparison video, I may throw out some of the differences here and there throughout this video. And in the essence of full disclosure, I did want to say that this was provided to me free of charge. However, there was no guarantee of a positive review, and they are not dictating the content of this video whatsoever. So without further ado, let's talk first about the price of this kit. So this 22 watt kit, which includes the laser system, let me check my notes. It retails for $12.99 US, but is currently on sale for $10.99. So prices do fluctuate here and there, which equates to about $17.93 regular price in Canadian dollars. I did want to throw that out as a Canadian, and currently on sale for $15.19 Canadian. Now the 40 watt, which includes the 1.6 watt laser, I think that that's going to be probably the best all-rounder for those of you that want to do those thicker cuts but also detail engraving. It retails for $18.99 US dollars and is currently on sale for $16.09 US, and that works out to about $26.21 Canadian, and currently on sale for $22.29 Canadian dollars. So I will put links in the description below. They will be affiliate links, so if you click and you make a purchase, I will get a bit of a kickback on that. But other than the laser being provided to me and those affiliate links, they are not paying to dictate the content whatsoever. Now, let's take a look at what came in the box, and I'll show you a bit of the setup process, which there is more of a setup process to this than some of the other lasers out there, but it is pretty cool with how it's fully enclosed and has this really cool roll top. Okay, so here we have it, the Creality Falcon2 Pro 22 watt laser cutter and engraver. Let's open this guy up. And here we have the base. Definitely easier to put the box on the ground and pull this out. This is nice. Very different from the Xtool. Yeah, looking forward to playing around with this. And all right, so before we start assembly, I just wanted to show you a little bit just kind of like what the diagrams are like in here. So they're pretty self-explanatory. So they've got real photos of the parts with some natural English language written out on how to connect everything. So probably gonna time lapse this part. Yeah, it is gonna take a little bit of time, but we'll come back and I'll show you the finished product before we turn it on. Okay, so we got the top assembled. Does roll pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. Definitely a little cumbersome to get together, but it's a one-time thing, so now I'm good to go. Okay, so now we can put the top on. Let's see how that fits. Oh, it kind of fits into place nicely, and I can see that once we get the sides on, that's what connects the base to the top that we've attached here. So it says let's do the side on the left with the exhaust port first. Okay, so this piece has plastic, and it had this on there. I just needed to take that off in order to get that plastic off, and nice and cleanly. I didn't want to fight it like I did with the other one. Okay, so we got the sides on. We've got the roll top on. Sorry for the audio there. We've got the laser in. We've got a lot done. Does take a little bit of time, so it's probably been about an hour of time so far. And I'd say that the hardest part was actually getting the back red panel in, so not such a big deal. So then the air assist can just kind of sit here, so it does take filters. Don't know exactly how to remove them at the moment, but it didn't come with any spares. So the X tool came with a few spares, but probably pretty easy to change in here, probably pretty easy to find. Creality is huge. So anyways, yeah, just kind of sits around. Okay, so coming around to the other side, we have a few things to point out here. So there are some controls on the front, which is nice. Some of them are used when you're actually using the SD card slot here, which allows you to load up a design, put it in there, use these controls and do it without a computer completely. We have the emergency stop button, then you turn it to unlock. So there, turned it, there, it's on, it's off. We also have a spot for keys. Turn that to the on position. And we have a port for the power brick. Then we have the USB-C port. Now it does come with two USB-C to Type A cables. I'm just going to be using straight USB-C to Type C because I've got lots of them. And so one is here to connect to the computer for control from the computer. And then the other is to connect the camera, which will then be visible to the computer. And the camera port, let me just zoom that back out. There's a USB-C port up here. So basically you're gonna have two cables, one from up here, one from over here, both going to the computer. Now, it would have been nice if they had both USB ports here and just kind of ran a cable to that inside, so they were all kind of in the same spot, but that's all right. So now the unit is fully set up. We basically just need to connect the USB cables to the computer, get into LightBurn, and start playing around with it. So let's do that. So now let's open her up. Now this roll top, while it did take a little bit to assemble, is quite convenient in that, again, it doesn't require that kind of vertical space to open up. It also gives great access to everything in here. So I really like that with this compared to the X tool. You can reach in, you can grab the laser. There's kind of a nice spot to hold it and push it around, get it out of the way, which is really quite nice. And the slat system in here is quite nice. So they're kind of like these little prisms. And well, you can see how they're positioned right here. They do make noise because they are all individually positioned, and there are a few different configurations. So right now I have them positioned just to show you here. So let's see if that gets into focus. Might not. Okay, but they are kind of positioned like an old school house. So you can position them with that kind of tip up front. And let's see if I can operate this through the camera. Now, for engraving things like coasters, what I do is I position these, sorry for all the sound, but position them like this on their sides. So that gives a much flatter surface. So if you do have something like a business card, for instance, or those kind of materials, you can do this kind of positioning for, I'm gonna guess that's probably about 10 inches there. So it is nice to have this flexibility, although it is different from the traditional honeycomb. But what's also cool is that they are raised up from the bottom quite a bit. So when it comes to making a cut or doing engrave and using the fan does an excellent job at evacuating all the smoke and that sort of thing out of here, because there is more room underneath than kind of a traditional honeycomb and a metal bottom enclosed laser. So with the system in here and how it's more front to back than left to right, the entire working area is 415 meters deep and 415 millimeters deep and 400 millimeters wide, which gives a total surface area of about 166,000 millimeters squared, which is quite big and a little bit bigger than what you can get on the X tool, with a completely different dimensional structure to it. And I haven't been limited to the size of materials that I've been cutting, so I have used a couple of larger sheets of plywood and that sort of thing in here, but I haven't felt like I've been limited with either the length or the width of the working area in here. Now, I do want to show you how the laser comes on and off, and it's super simple. There are these two thumb screws right here, so no tools needed. Just simply loosen these. Oh, it slides down, don't worry, it didn't hit the slats. And then we can pull that up and out. And you'll see that there is kind of this groove system right there. And something that I had to do, because I did notice that when I had the laser on initially, it would wobble a little bit back and forth. And I did find through a bit of an obscure link on the micro SD card that was included that this screw, or this nut, which is really oddly sized, I don't know if you can see that, can be tightened. So it's more of like a cam than anything, but you can tighten it slightly, and you don't want to over tighten it because then that can impact the movement from left to right with the automated system. But you do want to tighten it a little bit so you don't have that wobble. So just note this, that if you do have one of these, tighten that up if you do have that wobble, but don't over tighten it, otherwise you can impact the lateral movement. Okay, so we have the USB cables attached to the computer, and I did play around with this last night, but I wanted to completely remove the Falcon 2 Pro from LightBurn so I could show you the setup. And one of the kind of missing pieces is one of the files on this included micro SD card. So I dumped those contents to my computer, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So right now we're gonna load up LightBurn. I'm just in the trial period of LightBurn right now. It is a paid piece of software. So we can go here. You can't just click on Find My Laser. It won't auto detect it, but what we can do is we can go to Import, navigate to those contents of that micro SD. And it's kind of like a whole, I'm going to call it hidden manual on that micro SD card. I didn't realize how important it was going to be, but there is a lot of useful documentation in here, links to videos and that sort of thing. But software operation tutorial, LightBurn, and we need this LBDev file. So this is going to help LightBurn identify the laser, and we can do that. We've got the laser on right now. You will notice when you first turn the laser on that the fan does run for about 30 seconds, so don't be surprised when you hear that. Click OK. Oh, it was just detected. Okay, so it was detected, but the fan ran, so I jumped ahead just to not screw up the audio here. And you will notice that here it did auto-select the USB modem here. It'll probably be a COM port if you're on a Windows computer. It could be different, just depending on what setup you're using. And I did run into an issue last night where I was trying USB-C cables that I had, and the camera was being shown fine. And you can go to camera control, and we'll be able to select the Creality Falcon camera here. The camera was showing just fine. However, there was an issue where I couldn't get any control of the laser. And so I went back to the cables that they provided with the adapters, and it worked fine. So I'm gonna try some other USB-C cables, because I try to not use adapters as much as I can. But yeah, if you're on a Mac and you're just seeing Bluetooth incoming port and it's not detecting it at all, that could very well be the reason for you. So now what we have to do, and LightBurn, it has been a little fickle for me with some of these things, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna have to configure the camera. And to do that, we're gonna have to calibrate the camera lens. And to do so, and I'm not gonna show you all the details on this because it can take a little bit of time and it's not that interesting, but we're gonna select the Lens Calibration Wizard Creality Falcon camera, standard lens, and then we're gonna go through next. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this card with these circles that was included with the laser, and we're gonna place it in a variety of spots on the bed in the laser, and then do capture. So it walks you through all these steps, and I'll come back once I finish this part and show you the second part of the camera calibration. Okay, so we've gone through all of the lens calibration. Now we need to align the camera using that wizard. And this is all kind of right within the laser tools at the top. So select camera. And yeah, this is where it gets a little interesting. And I followed the instructions that were on the video that was included on the SD card. So I'm just gonna put this piece of basswood in the middle, in there, and then on here, hopefully that didn't get, I'm gonna select that this is 3mm material, and we're probably going to be able to go a little faster. Now they were putting in some huge numbers here. I think the only thing that I saw that I want to change is this 140. Let's turn the air assist on. And let me just move the camera to the tripod. Okay, so since this is essentially going to be our first engrave, we need to set the thickness of the material, and we're going to use that with this block. So what we can do is we can slide the laser over, we can undo these screws, basically rest the laser on there, tighten the screws up. There we go. So yeah, now we should be pretty good to go. So what I'm going to do, close this up, and I'm going to click on frame on here so we can see where it looks like it's going to cut. Oh. Okay, so it went off the edge. Let's go back to home. So we can press, let me just show you here. You can always press this home button and have the laser go back to home. Then let's click frame again. And now let's click frame again and see if it goes to the right spot. Okay. Can I see where it's going? I am going to have to move the piece of basswood just slightly to make sure that's all covered. Okay, so now that we're all framed up, we are going to click start, and we're going to let it do its thing to cut a test pattern that's going to allow us to fully align the camera. Okay, so the test pattern has been cut. Now it's back to the computer. Capture image. So what you can see here is that it has captured the image of what's in there. Click next. And what we're going to do here is we're going to zoom in, and you're going to see click marker 1. So now let's zoom in all the way. And we're going to click on the exact center of this little graphic that was there, double click. We're going to do that to all 4 of them here. And we're done. So the camera has been all set up, and now we can start to do our first engrave. Okay, so now we're going to do our test, and rather than just doing the engrave at kind of on its own, we are going to do both a cut and engrave at the same time. So I have been playing around with this for a couple of weeks to familiarize myself with the tool more, and right now you'll see that the laser's in the way from where we'd want to position it. So we could move the laser manually, or we could just press the home button and it'll move. And we can put in our material. Don't have to worry too much about alignment because there is that camera on this laser, which is awesome. Then we can move the laser manually, or you could use the buttons on the front to move it, although that could take a little bit of time. Then we're going to loosen the screws. Hope this is showing up on the camera all right. Tighten them. And we are using 3mm basswood plywood, so I am just kind of using the step that came with it just to set that focus and that depth. We can now close it. And we're also going to click home just to get the laser out of the way. Okay, so now we're going to be going into LightBurn, and a couple of things I want to highlight just before we get started. One are these material tests, and you'll see these little cards here. Can't see it great in the light here, but what you can do in LightBurn is you can go to Laser Tools, Material Tests, and you can select a variety of different settings and counts, and it will do progressions through those, which really kind of gives you a good sense of what the material is going to do. So I've done the same for pieces of leather as well as coasters using the Falcon2 Pro, and so material test is definitely something I'd recommend checking out. Lots of videos on YouTube that do a better job explaining it than I do, but we already know the settings that we want to do, and I'll walk through those in just a sec. But you'll see right here that the laser's in the way, but here we have the live view and the laser's not in the way. So what we can do is we can update the overlay, which is going to update to the workpiece right there, and I'm going to bring in a design. Just going to drag and drop this SVG file of this flower. I've been doing quite a bit of these with Mother's Day, and we can position it kind of wherever we want. And a few things I want to highlight, let's zoom in on this, is what I want to do is I want to do both an engrave as well as a cut. But I want to engrave the flower, and I want to do an outline cut. We can actually set an outline by going to this O over on the side, outline, and we want to do 2mm offset. You can go right up to the piece, you could go quite wide. You'll see that updates live in the background, which is awesome. So we're going to do 2mm outward and click OK. And then what we want to do, and this was a trick that a neighbor was showing me, is we can select what we want each of these paths to do. So I've already preset, I believe I have cut set for blue. So you'll see all these shortcuts at the bottom where you can set the speed and power. So this is a speed of 5 millimeters per second and power of 60. If I updated it right here, it would update that blue setting. Then I can select the other paths. And I want to do this one in red, which is engrave. And something to be really conscious of is the positioning here. So whether you want to do the engrave or the cut first. In this case, we want to do the engrave first. So you'll see that it says fill and the cut is line. So what we can do here is we can click frame, and what that's going to do is it's going to move the laser and show where it's going to be cutting on that workpiece. And it should match what we see in LightBurn. Yeah, so that spot looks good. And now what we can do is we can get started. And just as we get started, I am going to position the camera, and LightBurn is saying that this is going to take about 4.5 minutes. So I will check back and show you the results then. So I'm just moving around the back of the laser. It is pretty cool how you do get this 360 view, something that I really like about the Creality Falcon2 Pro. You can see how it's moving along its axes. You can see the laser. All right, so it's just about done the engrave, and it's going to switch to the cut any second, and there you go. You see it slow down. You hear the air assist pick up. I love watching this. It doesn't get old. All right, and the cut is just about done, but we're then going to let the fan run for about 30 seconds just to let all the exhaust come out of the enclosure. Okay, let's open it up and take a look. Haha. There we go. A beautiful flower, engraved really nicely. So this is a little bit more of an intense engrave than you may want. So it does give a little bit of a depth, which this looks awesome. So now, while this one was that fine outline cut, with that detailed engrave on the SVG of the flower, I do want to show you a couple of other ways that you could do this. So I've got some examples here. One is just simply cutting out the outline. And so whether it's kind of like for my daughter or kind of whoever that may want to color it in and do their own design, you could do that. You can also do a fainter line, and so instead of a fill, so what I did here was I did the line to cut on the outside with the outline, but then I also did a line to essentially cut but very narrowly with the speed of the engrave, which gave it that very thin line. So I do this for my daughter with some characters and that sort of thing for her to draw and color on. And then the other one is to just do a cut. So this is just loading the SVG, no outline, and just doing a cut, which cuts out all of these nice little fine components and really kind of a little more decorative. This is the design that I've done for a lot of Mother's Day gifts across a number of different flowers that where I purchased the SVGs on Etsy. So really cool, and I feel like these kind of give that great demo of what this tool can do. Again, you're kind of limited by your own creativity and your capabilities in LightBurn. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at what the laser can do, what do I like about this laser? Now, this is kind of that pros versus cons list. So on the pros, I want to first talk about the footprint of this laser. It is awesome from a space perspective. So it is 760 millimeters wide, and that includes the air assist and that sort of thing. I want to factor in kind of the total complete width, depth, and height required for this laser. So 760 millimeters wide, 660 millimeters deep, which is awesome, and only 330 millimeters tall. So really quite nice footprint of this. And I think, second of all, the build quality of this. So like while the top of the roll top might feel a little flimsy when you're putting it together, it does a great job at filtering the laser light out. And the side panels are awesome. It does kind of take that assembly, and part of the assembly process, you kind of feel a bit more of a connection with the system. And that might be a bit corny to say, but I definitely see that as something that I like about this laser. I feel connected to it. It feels like more industrial DIY. Like there's just something about that I really liked about putting this together, even though it did take a bit longer than I expected. Also on the pros list, being able to move the bar around so easily with your hand is awesome. Being able to have that 360 view of everything that's going on in here is really cool. The camera system, while it does take a little while to calibrate and get set up, it is quite helpful when it comes to layout in LightBurn. So really thankful to have that camera, and it's a different system than what the X tool is. So it's not necessarily that I need a camera on the X tool, it's just different. But the camera does make layout and positioning much easier on the Creality Falcon2 Pro. So now one thing that I haven't used, but I do want to put out there as a pro for those that want to use it, is being able to load up designs on that micro SD card, put it in, and do that from there. I don't want to get into exactly how it would work because I don't know, but that is a really cool feature of this. And the controls on the front, just being able to move the laser around, being able to do the framing and home it, all with those buttons is really quite nice. I do wish that the X-Tool S1 had those on it. And there is something to say about that really satisfying emergency stop. Another thing that I really like about this is the ventilation, and that 3-inch dust hose. It may not sound very big, but the fan is quite powerful as the one on the X tool. But with the way that the slats are positioned and that they're raised up, it really does a great job at removing that exhaust. And it does run for a longer period of time, which can be a bit annoying, especially when I'm trying to film, but it does a great job. And when I open this up right now, there's no residual smell from any of the cutting that I was doing earlier this evening. So that's something that's really cool about this overall. And I think the last thing that I really kind of want to highlight as far as what I really like about this, the price point. And I think looking at a variety of lasers, when it comes to fully enclosed, you're not going to beat this value. This is excellent value. So coming in at about $600 cheaper than a comparable X tool is really quite nice. You do get a little bit of a different feature set, different software requirements, although LightBurn seems to kind of be the industry norm for DIY and hobbyists. So it is a much more price, I don't know, the price is just really quite attractive on this. So being able to get the version that I have in front of me right now for just over $1,000 seems quite impressive compared to the other market. And when you look at those that are not fully enclosed and require different safety precautions when it comes to ventilation and eyes and that sort of thing, you're not paying a massive premium for this fully enclosed 22 watt laser. So I think that's something I definitely want to highlight on this. All right, so let's go handheld while we talk about some of the things that I didn't necessarily like that much about the Creality Falcon2 Pro. And I think that, again, as much as I like the design in this roll top, having to put this together was definitely a bit of a pain. It had plastic covering that I thought you were supposed to peel off on this, but then they also had on the micro SD card, they had a video link to it where they kept all that on, but then it would be pretty foggy. But now that I've taken it off, it's all kind of scratched up here. That might be the normal use case, but the instructions themselves, while they kind of like go through like what you're supposed to do, they don't show all the details. It might not show up on camera here, but sometimes it was hard to know like which part goes ahead of which. So aligning the screws was sometimes a little off, and then I would have to take everything off and redo it. So that was a little cumbersome, as was putting in all the screws with multiple size hex tops and all that kind of stuff. So the assembly of this and the documentation of the assembly was definitely something that left a little bit to desired. It was nice to have print, but there was no kind of notes on here that the micro SD card contains additional material, which included like a single Word document with a link to a video on a different Creality website. So the setup process was definitely a little cumbersome, and I had to do a little bit of troubleshooting, but definitely take a look at that micro SD card when you first get that. Another thing from a design perspective is just the amount of cords that come off this is a little annoying. So I think for me, like having these two at the front, that's okay, but I would have wished if power was closer to the back. But then there's the USB cord up here. I do wish that there was a way to internally route that camera, potentially to kind of like, if they had like an internal USB-C, I don't know, hub or something like that, where you only had to attach one USB-C cable, because attaching both and with the included adapter here, I haven't really seen too many manufacturers of things go from USB-C and then to USB-A, and then include a USB-A to USB-C adapter. It's usually USB-C to USB-C, and then a USB-C to USB Type-A adapter. So, and these are wide. So on my MacBook, I have to plug one in on one side and one in on the other. So having the two USB cables, definitely, it's kind of like a minor thing overall, but something that's definitely a little more cumbersome with everyday use is focusing the laser. So having to put this block down, which only has the settings here for, it says basswood, but like I was using this for the majority of my material and didn't have an issue, but there's not really a guide on how to use this other than to throw it down, have the edge of the laser touch it, lower it down, and then screw those in. So the focusing of the laser is something that I did find so much easier on the X tool with kind of the pinpointer that it uses. So that was kind of one of the bigger things with this laser that I didn't like. Another thing that I do want to highlight is like, see these LEDs? So air's not on, so air assist isn't on right now because it's open and not running. And fire and lens, so no fire, and the lens isn't dirty. So these will tell you when there is a fire and when the lens is dirty. But here's an interesting thing, and I hope this shows up on camera, is you close the roll top and it filters out the green of those LEDs. So if there's a fire, and one of the settings for the lens is, hey, the lens is really dirty, stop this job and fix it. Well, I can't see them through the screen. So it's good to be able to see the red, but so I guess that in that case, I guess it's just not all systems go. It's more about looking for something that's not working. So that's something that I didn't necessarily like about this. I think the only other thing, and this is kind of a minor nitpick and probably just has to do with the slat structure here, but when you have material on there, not such a big deal with this sheet of basswood plywood, but if there's like kind of like any sort of warp, there's not a great way to clip it down, whereas the X tool does have these clips that go into the honeycomb and they're magnetic and hold it down really well. So same with like leather, where there's just kind of like maybe a little bit of a cupping, so having a hold down on each side helps to keep it flat, and you can't really do that with these slats. So I'm kind of all ears if you have any recommendations for material hold down on this slat system, but that was something that I did find a little frustrating about this. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the Creality Falcon 2 Pro. Now, I'm very much a beginner, so please take this as a beginner would share these sorts of things. There are probably some of you screaming at your screen right now, being like, oh, you missed this part. And this is not meant to be fully inclusive of all of the features and different things that this is able to do. I'm a beginner. I've spent a few weeks with this, so I'm probably at like 30 to 40 hours using this tool. Much of that has been using LightBurn, and I think that that's one of the nuances to this, is that you will be forced to either use LightBurn or what's the other one called? Laser GRBL. Once I started to familiarize myself with LightBurn and had a neighbor fill me in on a few things as far as, say, material thickness and that sort of thing, I started to feel a little more comfortable with it. So I can see the capabilities that that tool and that software will bring to the table. Now, if you are interested in this laser, I think that it should make your shortlist if you are interested in a laser cutter engraver. But I think I'd highly recommend taking a look at that 40 watt plus 1.6 watt bundle instead. The 40 watt, given like how good the slat system is in here at clear note exhaust with this, and this hasn't even been hooked up to like a fume extractor or any of that kind of stuff. I am going to be looking at either fume extraction or an inline fan system to help with exhaust, so I don't have to keep wheeling these out onto the driveway when I'm using them. But I think that 40 watt laser can be so much more powerful, and if you are cutting thicker material, it's going to clear out that smoke and fumes. And that 1.6 watt is going to give you finer engraving. I did find that the 22 watt gave pretty good engraving, very satisfactory when it came to coasters and wood and that sort of thing. But if you want to get into like engraving anything more detailed, that 1.6 watt would go a long way. As far as kind of expanding this system, I'm not looking at a rotary tool anytime soon. I think that I'm pretty basic with wanting to cut things out for my daughter and that sort of thing. And some of the woodworking that I do, maybe do some engraving on cutting boards and that sort of thing. So I think this is going to be a great system for that. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Creality Falcon 2 Pro, whether you have one, whether you don't have one. Feel free to ask any questions, and I'm more than happy to come out and test something or kind of give you my thoughts on it if I miss it in this video, because there will be a lot of things that I miss. And if you are interested in purchasing, I'd very much appreciate it if you did click one of the links in the description below, because I will get a little bit of a kickback on that. But yeah, I think that this has been my coverage on the Creality Falcon 2 Pro. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And stay tuned for more videos soon. They won't all be laser focused, don't worry. But this has definitely been a very cool addition to my shop and something I'm excited to continue to play around with. Thanks.